Hey, Charles here with Rocky Mountain, and you're watching part 2 of our top-end rebuild series for the CRF450R, model years 2017 and newer. Again, this is a 2025 we're working on. We had a leaky head gasket and we're getting all that stuff repaired. So let's jump into the process. Now, really quick, we did talk about parts in our teardown video, but if you need a piston kit or any other rebuild parts, just head over to our website, click the link in the description below. Now for assembly, we're gonna start at the bench. All right, now that we have all of our parts cleaned up, we're gonna prep our piston. So with that, one of the first things you wanna do is prep the top ring. So this is gonna be the thicker ring that comes with your kit. And we're gonna place this down inside our cylinder. And I'm just gonna use our new piston to square this up. We'll go about that deep right there. And then we're gonna measure this end gap. We just wanna make sure we have enough of a gap that when the bike gets hot, we don't want the ring ends touching each other because that can damage the cylinder wall. So the spec on this bike is 10 to 12 thousandths of an inch. So we're just gonna use our feeler gauge and measure that out. All right, so we are within spec. Now, most of the time, these ring gaps, you're not gonna have to mess with them. But if you do find you have a gap that is too tight, what you can do is use a file that's held in your vise, and then you can file both sides down evenly. Just make sure you're careful with all of this when you do it. And then when you file the ring, you wanna make sure you're pushing from the outside in. So that way, if there is a slight little edge, it's not going against your cylinder wall when you go back together. But if you do this, I would recommend just deburring all the edges anyway, make sure it's all good. All right, the next step is to prep your piston. So with this, we're going to install one of these circlips on the bench. That's just gonna make things easier once we're over at the bike. Now, I like to install the circlip that is going to be harder to install on the bike. Normally I'd go cam chain side, but on this bike, I'm actually gonna go to the right-hand side. So we've got our piston. This arrow is gonna be facing the exhaust side or the front of the bike. So I'm gonna be installing the clip on this side. And then one thing to keep in mind is when you install these, you want the open side of the clip either straight down at the 6 o'clock position or straight up at the 12 o'clock position. We're gonna start right next to, we have that little access groove. I'm gonna have this opening that's kind of by the 6 o'clock position. That's gonna start out right there, and then we're gonna work it on all the way around. The main thing to keep in mind is you don't want to over compress this because it could deform it. You want this to be nice and tight once it's in there. So we're gonna take small bites and work it in place. So it's gonna start just like this. I'm gonna keep thumb pressure on it, and then I'm gonna use this screwdriver as a ramp to help pry this in place. But I'm gonna be really gentle with it and just barely be tipping that in a little bit. Again, you don't wanna over collapse that clip. So it's kinda hard to show this process. I've got it worked on all the way to there, so I'm just gonna press up on this last little bit, finish working it into place. You want to hear that snap and make sure, go around, verify that it's all the way in its groove, and we've got that opening straight towards the bottom. So we're ready to install our rings now. All right, right here I've got the expander ring. So this gap, if that way's facing forward, going to the left side, that's going to be in that bottom groove. And with the expander ring, you just want to make sure it's not overlapping on itself. Now, to verify that the ends aren't overlapping, you can use either a screwdriver or small pick and just pull them away and let them come back together. Now we have these oil control rails. There's going to be one on top, one on bottom. The one on bottom, I'm going to put that underneath that expander ring. Then the opening is going to be facing the exhaust side. And then for the top oil control rail, the open side will be facing the intake side of the piston. And with these, there's no top or bottom. You can install them either way. And then for the top ring or compression ring, this does have a top. So there's going to be a marking on your rings, and it might look different from brand to brand. Just make sure that's facing up, and we're going to have this open gap towards the exhaust. We're just going to work the ring on into its groove. And as you do this, just be careful. You don't want to scratch up your piston as you're doing that. And then from here, all we need to do is lube these parts up. We're also going to lube the cylinder up. Make sure the sealing surfaces are nice and wiped down, they're clean, and we'll take these parts over to the bike. Now with these cylinders, we always scrub them out with soap and water. We use some different sizes of bottle brushes to clean the bore end down these stud holes. You want to make sure, especially with that oil passage running through here, you want to make sure that's all free and clear. But one last check you can do to make sure you don't have any grit down in the bore. Use a little contact cleaner on a microfiber towel. Make sure you don't get any black material transferred over there. As long as it comes out clean, you're good to go. Okay, so over at the bike, I'm going to apply some assembly lube to the small end of the connecting rod. Then with this piston, make sure you have the arrow facing the front of the bike. We've got our piston pin. Slide that into the side of the piston. We're going to set that over the small end of the connecting rod and slide the wrist pin in. All right, now we can install this circlip the same way we did on the bench. I'm going to block some of the process. Sorry about that, but I know it's a little hard to see. Again, we've just got it started in that groove. I'm going to use my thumb to try to press it in a little bit at a time, and then we'll get that last little bit with the screwdriver. And as you do this, again, we've got that rag underneath here to make sure if it pops out, the rag catches it. Okay, next up, putting the dowel pins in, along with our base gasket. And then right where these case halves come together, there's a little crack. On the stock gaskets, the manual recommends applying just a little bit of silicone sealant right there. Our base gasket already comes with some of that installed on it. All right, for the next step, we're going to install the cylinder onto the piston. Now, with that, you can squeeze the rings together by hand and slide that cylinder down. But one thing you can do to make it even a little bit easier is use a ring compressor. That's what we're going to do today. And that way we make sure that we don't damage any of our rings, especially those oil control rings. I have seen corners bent before. So where these parts are critical for your bike to run good, we're just using the right tool for the job. So I've already put some lube on that band, and then I'm going just off the top of the piston, so it's covering my rings. And I'm gonna start tightening this up, and I already verified that all the rings are in the same spots that we initially installed them in. I also verified that little gap on the expander ring. So when you have the rings compressed all the way, you're gonna feel that wing nut stop, and we're gonna back it off just a little bit so the cylinder can slide down. Don't want it too tight. And before we do that, I'm gonna make sure I have all these rags out from the bottom end. I'm going to pull this cam chain up, and we're going to verify that we've got the piston at its highest point, which we do. So from here we can slide that cylinder down into place. With everything lined up, I just held one side with the bottom of my fingers and pushed down on the cylinder, slid over the rings. So once you're that far on, you need to remove your tool. Now keep in mind, if it hangs up at any point as it's going over the rings, something's wrong. You need to stop and start over. Just make sure you don't catch an edge of one of the rings. Now before I slide the cylinder all the way down, I'm just going to verify I don't have any assembly lube on my gasket. Quickly wipe it off if you do. Then we can go ahead and slide the cylinder down the rest of the way. Make sure your dowel pins are aligned. There we go. And then up top, we've got a little bit of oil. I'm gonna wipe that off and make sure the sealing surface for the head is clean. Now for the head, we're going to put our dowel pins in place. And I've got the other cam chain guide, very important, don't forget this. And it's this longer side going down. There's actually a little groove that this needs to sit in. Same thing at the top of the guide. Next we have our head gasket. Just make sure you don't have any O-rings in between the layers. Depending on what kit you get, that can happen. Now with the gasket in place, we'll set the cylinder head on. Now for the cylinder head bolts, I'm going to make sure that the threads are lubed up, the washers are lubed up. We've got a little bit of assembly lube on both spots. And then to get these bolts installed into the head, we're actually going to have to lift up on this and tip it back just a little bit. We'll install those front two bolts first. Set the head back into place, make sure the dowel pins are in the correct positions and that the gasket is still on there. Set these back two cylinder head bolts in place. And then we've got the M6 bolt on the side. We're going to start threading that in, but we're not going to tighten it yet. And I do have some low strength thread lock on that. Now to tighten the cylinder head down, we're going to do this in a crisscross pattern. We're going to do a few different steps. The final torque is going to be 37 foot-pounds on these big bolts. Then I'm going 7 foot-pounds on that M6 bolt. After that, we can reinstall our shims. And as we go together, everything else, we've already lubed it up. Make sure you get the shims back in the correct positions. And if you needed to change a shim out, make sure you do that now. Then we have our rocker arms and shafts. And with these shafts, they've got the little notch for the bolts going down, so make sure you get that lined up. All right, next thing we're going to do is set the cam in place. This bearing next to the sprocket is going to slide to the side. It's going to give you a little bit of space. I'm going to pull this safety wire off the chain and make sure you line up your timing marks as you do this. All right, now we've got these C-clips for our cam bearings. Set those in place. Then from here, we're making sure we have the dowel pins on the cam cap. And we're going to line this up with those little C-clips as we go together. You want to make sure that the cap sits flush against the cylinder head and that you're able to do that by hand. And then we're going to install our bolts. So the bolts with the pins on the end, Those are going to be towards the back. Normal bolts towards the front. And with these, if they're not starting, it means those rocker arm shafts, the little cutouts, might not be lined up, so you can verify that. And then we're going to tighten these in a crisscross pattern. We're going to do it in a couple steps and tighten them to 11 foot-pounds. All right, now for the cam chain tensioner. I've got this new gasket in place, and if you want to verify that everything's working correctly, you can use your small flat blade screwdriver. Wind this up, make sure it releases all on its own, which this one's looking great. So we're going to go ahead and install it. We're going to be using this cam chain tensioning tool to hold it in place. If you don't have this, again, as you set this in place, you can use a screwdriver to wind it up, needle nose pliers on your screwdriver to keep it from unwinding. We just don't want to tighten it down and have it put tension on the chain. We want to be able to release the screwdriver and then have it tighten the chain. That way you don't damage anything. After that, we can put the end cap on with the crush washer. And we're going to verify our timing marks. It's also not a bad idea to double check your valve clearances at this point. And when you check the timing, it's a good idea to rotate the engine over a couple of times just to make sure everything's working good, and do that final check, make sure everything's timed correctly. Then we can go ahead and reinstall our valve cover, making sure all of our gaskets are in place. We'll install the 2 bolts on top, and we've got our spark plug. Okay, now I'm going to put the intake boot back on. We've got this alignment tab at the bottom. After that, we're going to reconnect our coolant temp sensor, and there's a couple of other connectors we're going to clip into place before we install our throttle body. Okay, now I'm going to make sure the throttle body hose clamp is in place. Verify that you've removed any rags from the intake. We'll route the throttle body down, and we'll make sure it's all the way into that boot. And there's a little alignment tab on the side. Make sure it's lined up. I'm also going to connect these sensors. After that, we'll tighten down our hose clamp for the throttle body. And up front, we've got our radiator hose. We'll install that and tighten the clamp. All right, now for the ignition coil. I'm gonna hook up my wires before I mount it. So green wire to the green post, black to black. Gonna plug the spark plug boot in on top of the spark plug. And we've got these 2 bolts holding it on. All right, now for the engine hangers, we've got the spacer on this left side. We're going to install the bolts. The upper ones are going to be torqued to 24 foot-pounds. The lowers are going to be 40. Next, we're going to install the subframe. Make sure that the air boot is completely installed onto the throttle body. And then we have these slightly longer bolts going in the top, slightly shorter ones going in the bottom. And when you do that, make sure you have this wiring out of your way. Then subframe bolts, we're going to tighten the top to 24 foot-pounds and the bottom to 32. We've got our reg rec. We're going to set that in place and bolt it down. And we've got our intake air temperature sensor we're going to plug in. Now we can reconnect our ECU. And from here, we're going to reconnect our battery and install the cover. After that, I'm going to install my exhaust gasket. We've got our head pipe. We'll install the 2 nuts and leave them slightly loose. And we've got our slip-on. Now with all the hardware loosely installed, we'll start tightening in the front and work our way back. As you go back together, make sure that all of your cables are routed correctly. Reinstall any ties. Then we're going to reinstall our gas tank. So we're hanging this off the side of the bike. We've got our fuel line. We'll push that on, make sure it's on all the way. Our fittings are clean. Press the green tab down. We've got our cover. Next, we're going to plug the fuel pump in. We'll press the retainer into that little cutout. Now we can set the gas tank in place. We'll remove that pincher on top. And from here we can reinstall all of our plastics and seat. Also, don't forget your timing plug cover. Next, we need to top this off with coolant. We already have a fresh air filter in here, and now we just need to put some fresh engine oil in. So we're draining all the old stuff out, changing our filter. If you need to know how to do that, we've got a separate how-to video. All right, so that's it for rebuilding the top end on your 2017 and newer CRF450R or RX. We've got this all buttoned up. Now, if you need parts for your bike, you can find that stuff on our website by clicking the link in the description below. Orders over $75 ship free. And if you have any questions, leave those down in the comments. Now, don't forget, we've got a lot of how-to videos on these bikes, so go check them out on our channel and subscribe. Now for us, I've got the coolant topped off, I've got fresh oil in here. I'm ready to light this thing up and go ride. We'll catch you guys in the next video.